Hey, what's up? Thanks for tuning in. This video, we're going to talk about NYC and NY state transfer taxes. What are they and who pays them? One of the big benefits about owning property in New York City is that we actually have one of the lowest property tax carrying cost rates in the tri-state area and on the East Coast. One thing is like if you buy one of these $2 million brownstones, sometimes the property taxes are only like $500 a month, which is really cheap. Sometimes you can go to places in upstate New York, buy a house for $300,000 and it's $1,000 a month. Or New Jersey, where, I grew up in a town called Westfield. Not uncommon to have a $40,000 tax bill on your house for like $1 million, $700,000 house. Okay, I digress. NYC and NY state, when you sell a property, you pay these taxes to the government. There's the New York State one, and there is the New York City one. Most recently, they did up some of the transfer taxes, and they break down in different ways. So we're going to go over that. There's this Street Easy article, which is actually pretty helpful. If you want to go reference it, just type in transfer taxes. If you're selling a property in New York City, you need to be aware of closing costs. So, not only if you're selling, do you have maybe like a brokerage cost or marketing cost, you also have an attorney's cost because you definitely want to use an attorney when you're selling your house in New York City. Then you also have transfer taxes, okay? And you could also have something called a flip tax. They're different. We'll go into it. But transfer taxes are levied by the state of New York and New York City. So how much are they? Who pays them? What's the deal? Because it changes depending on the property. If it's a new development, it's a resale, it's a co-op. It just depends. It's a point of negotiation, but there tends to be certain trends that happen. The New York City transfer tax, formerly known as the real property transfer tax, RPTT, must be paid whenever real estate is transferred between two parties. It applies to all residential properties in New York City, including townhouses, condos, and co-ops. Outside of the city, you just pay state taxes. So unlike, you also have closing costs associated with your mortgage. So if you pay cash, you don't pay those, but no matter what, you will be paying transfer taxes on your property. So before we go into the transfer taxes, what's a flip tax? Flip tax is specific for co-ops. If you saw my last video, what is a co-op apartment in New York City? We kind of profile a few of these things. In this situation, you're buying and selling shares. So for instance, for sellers in certain co-ops, they have a thing called flip tax. It can be larger than the transfer tax, or it could be zero. It really depends. Typically, I see 1%, 2%, 3% is something that you'll see. And a flip tax is when you sell the property, you pay, it's not to the government, it's to the co-op. So you might pay 1% on the way out, 2% on the way out, pretty common. But it can go from $500 all the way up to 15%. Or I had one this spring where we didn't pay any flip tax, which, I personally think it increases the value of the sticker price because people look at it, they say, hey, I'm not paying this tax on the way out, similar to a condo. These larger flip taxes arise in buildings where previously income restricted buildings like a HDFC apartment. So like there's some apartments that say you can only make between $50,000 and $80,000 a year. And then over time, those rules they disappear for whatever reason. They're voted out or the city allows this. And then now you have a huge buyer pool with larger incomes that could buy. So they might get huge windfalls. So say you bought it for $50,000, you sold it for $700,000. That's when you're going to get a large or a fair market value, get a large flip tax. And, the co-op feels like they're entitled to this money on the way out. They also do this so you're not flipping co-ops. They want people to make these their primary residence. How much are the NYC and NY state transfer taxes? With the passage of the 2020 state budget, that New York City transfer tax remains the same, but the New York state transfer tax has increased for purchases over $3 million. And the mansion tax was also revised in 2020. More on that in a different article. We can do that. A mansion tax is actually paid by the buyer if they buy over $1 million, and it kind of escalates now where it used to be flat for different price points. But the New York State has switched to be escalating now. New York State transfer tax, 0.4% of sales price of properties below 3 million and 0.65 for the purchases over 3 million. New York City transfer taxes, sale price $499 and under is 1%. 500 and over is 1.425, which is which I don't really like, because what if you sell it for it, you owe 30% more in taxes if you're only making one or two, $50,000 more, say from 470 to 570. Doesn't make sense to me. For an example, if a property is sold for $499 or less, the combined total transfer tax is 1.4 of the sale price. If the property is cost more than $500, the total transfer tax is 1.825 to 2.075, depending on the price. Okay, and you can see here, if you're listening to the podcast, if it's audio only, you're going to miss this, but it'll show you the escalating transfer taxes. State remain the same, 0.4, 299 million under, 3 and above, 0.65. And then the transfer tax for New York City is just 1% or 1.4 over 500. Examples of transfer tax costs. Selling for $425. Imagine if you were selling a studio on the Upper East Side for $425K. Because the sales price is below $499, the transfer tax would be 1.4. The sum of the New York State transfer tax, 0.4, and then NYC, 1. So the total amount of transfer tax owed on that specific transaction, $425,000, would be $5,950. Okay? We don't need to go into it, but there's also another example of like 2.4. So you sold something for $2.4 million. The transfer tax would be $43,800. You sell for $5 million. The transfer tax would be $103,750. So who pays the transfer tax in New York City? So this is important because in certain circumstances it changes. Generally speaking, in New York City, the seller covers the transfer tax. However, there's one important caveat with new development sales or sponsor units. People try to get the buyer to pay. It's how they try to package the bundle. Sometimes developers will pick up the tab as a point of negotiation. You'll see, like, for instance, since we've kind of been in a buyer's market for a couple months now, maybe a year, a little bit more, you'll see new developments send out new articles, say they haven't sold enough in 6-7 months. Now they're paying your transfer taxes, or they're paying your transfer tax and they're going to pay maintenance for X amount of time. If a buyer is paying the transfer tax and they can't you can't finance the cost because they need to have this cash available at closing. That's an important situation. And like I said, it all based on market conditions. Okay, and that's it for transfer taxes. We kind of covered it all. If you have any questions, let me know. DM me, follow me at Marcus Amadeus on Instagram, or Marcus Schott Real Estate on Facebook. YouTube, like, subscribe, send it to a friend who might be looking to buy. And as you may know, I'm a real estate agent in New York State. We have a great team in the city to help you out. Also, tri-state, nationwide, agents, attorneys, lenders, contractors, movers, we can help you out. Hope you enjoyed this video. Have a beautiful, beautiful day. Bye.